Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On MLB listeners will get $50 off of purchases of $500 or more. The podcast exclusive includes engagement rings, so use code Locked On at checkout.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you go see my lower third, there it is. Please just call me Sully. This episode is being dropped on the 14th day of June, 2022. And thanks so much for making us your first listeners. We're available on all your free podcasting catchers. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On MLB Pods. Same handle for Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. You see that right there? I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Well, one of the surefire bets, and no, I'm not getting into a Locked On MLB bet online commercial right now. One of the surefire bets going into this year was that the Milwaukee Brewers were going to repeat as division champions. They had the pitching staff. Last year, I thought they were going to actually win the pennant going into the playoffs. I didn't quite see the buzzsaw that was the Atlanta Braves bullpen. But the Brewers look like the class of the National League Central. And do you know what? They very well could still win that division. But a massive losing streak that just finished over the weekend has suddenly made the Brewers look extraordinarily vulnerable. Well, there's only one place to turn, a proverbial bat signal to send out, and that is to the host, the new host, at least new to us, the new host of Locked On MLB. It's Dominic Cotroneo. He joins us today. How you doing, Dominic?
Hey, Sully, how's it going? It's much better in the good land now.
Oh, yeah. Well, you and I had been playing a little bit of email tag trying to get you on the show, and I think you timed it to be after the Brewers finished their losing streak.
A little easier to talk about right now.
Yeah, because they went on a real ugly nosedive, and then the last game they played was on Sunday. And pulling back the curtain a little bit, we are recording this shortly after the Brewers' victory on Sunday afternoon. But the Brewers, they beat Washington 4-1. And I got to be honest with you, even though the final score was 4-1, it seemed a lot closer than that for most of the game that was going on. I kept thinking, all right, I wonder when the shoe's going to drop in time for Dominic to show up and talk about yet another Brewer loss. But a home run by McCutchen gave him a little bit of wiggle room. But this has been a really ugly – how long was the streak? Was it a
8-game losing streak?
8-game. It's never the right time of the year to drop a week of games.
In a way, though, Willie Williams did say after the game on Sunday that, look, if you're going to drop 8 in a row, let's do it now. Let's not do it at the end of the season. Let's do it in June and kind of get it out of the way, figure out the flaws that this team may have. But you're right about skating by. I mean, Jason Alexander escaped some jams in those first 5 innings to keep it as a tight contest. And the Brewers had a lead, held on to it for the first time in like a week. It's been quite a trek. A lot of panic happening in the Brewers Twitter land. It's been a lot to deal with, but I'm a very patient person. I can explain on all that as we're get this episode going.
Well, I mean, a sign of it's smart to be patient. I mean, we did a whole episode on over the weekend about how it doesn't seem like anybody wants to win the National League Central. You know, since May 30th, the Brewers have won 2 games. They had that walk-off win against San Diego, and then they had this afternoon's win. And that includes some brutal losses to the Cubs, a pure sweep by both San Diego and Philadelphia. And there were some games where they got kind of bombed in a couple of those games.
It was not even close in a few of those games.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
They now there's a little bit of a chicken or the egg thing because the Brewers were ice cold, but they also played a red hot San Diego team and a rejuvenated Philadelphia Phillies team. So there's a little part of me wondering, was it bad luck that they hit these two teams on a big upswing? Or was it good luck for them that they were facing a Brewers team that was spiraling? This is all in retrospect, but I wonder how much of it is a combination, how much of it is, who was really bad and who was really good at that point.
I hate the phrase a perfect storm because, look, there's 162 games. You're going to have cold stretches. In a way, though, this truly was, because for the Brewers, they're down Freddie Peralta. They haven't had Freddie Peralta since the end of May. He's not going to pitch again until September.
Right when this slump started.
Exactly. Yeah. Brandon Woodruff gets diagnosed with Raynaud's syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of this, where you lose sensation and nerve in your fingers, and that you get discoloration in your fingers because of blood vessel issues. This while rehabbing his ankle that he hurt against the Cardinals. So he hadn't pitched in 2 weeks. And then on top of that, you also had just got Willie Adames back. He didn't return to the lineup until June 8th. You didn't have Hunter Renfroe until June 7th. Every team deals with injuries, but in these last 3 weeks, the Brewers have been nailed. I mean, you lose your number 2 and your number 3 starter, and you lose your number 2 hitter and your number 4 hitter. So not a lot of teams are going to survive that. And for the Padres to come in as hot as they were after their homestand, and the Phillies are looking like absolute stars again, that was a tough go of things for the Brewers. But let's be honest, the Brewers did not play anywhere close to their potential in that 8-game losing streak. And they lost 10 of 11 before Sunday's win, going back to those last 2 games against the Cubs that you had mentioned. It's been really tough, specifically with the bats.
The reason I brought that up is that if these were like 7 or 8 like 1-run games or walk-off wins from the visitor, you sort of can chop that up to a ball bounce the wrong way. I mean, if the game is tied in the 9th, you almost have to just throw it's a coin toss at this point. Or if it goes into extra inning, they have the ghost runner on. It almost doesn't even require skill. But when you have a couple of blowouts from a team that had images of a pennant dancing in their head, that's when you start to say, oh, wait a second. We're getting our ass kicked.
Absolutely.
And that was the thing that raised the red flag to me. They had a couple of close losses, and there was the walk-off win, as I mentioned, that happened in
the Padres series. Game 1 of the Padres.
Thank you. The Padres series. But then Burns pitched badly. Mm-hmm. And then you had Hauser got bombed. And those series against Philadelphia, save for the first game, was just a trouncing. And then they played Washington, who has one more hitter than me, and then they lose. They get bombed in Washington, and I'm like that. And the thing that makes it doubly disturbing if you're a Brewers fan is you have a series coming up against the Mets in New York, and you kind of look at that and you go like, you got to pile up a couple of wins against Washington because the Mets are there to play. And they're going to be tough to beat, especially at home. So that was the thing that raised the red flag for me in terms of Milwaukee.
The thing that Milwaukee has been dealing with is literally, it's Murphy's Law. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. Josh Hader blew his first save of the year in that first game against the Phillies. He gave up 2 home runs, one to Matt Vierling. Like, are you kidding? First blown save of the year for him. Mentioned the injuries to Woodruff and Peralta and Adames and Renfroe. On top of that, Andrew McCutchen was in a 1-for-38 slump. Colton Wong's been dealing with a calf. Now he's on the IL. Rowdy Tellez has been ice cold. He's starting to hit the ball hard again, but he had been ice cold. Their starting catcher got COVID. The bullpen was down. They don't have anyone left in the middle relief right now. So literally was Murphy's Law for a stretch of those 11 games.
It was a country music song. It was like everything was going wrong.
My dog left me, and then my girl left me, and my truck broke down, and it was brutal. But look, if it's going to happen at any time, it's good to happen in June because, look, the Cardinals are kind of the blueprint. I talked about this in Monday's episode on my podcast on Locked On Brewers, and that, look, the Cardinals are the blueprint of the reason why you play 162 games from last season, right? They go on that 17-game winning streak in September. They win 21 of their last 25 games. They were 4 games under 500 this time last year. They were not a thought at all. And then they rallied to make the wild card game. Now, I don't think the NL Central is good enough to have a wild card participant, given the Padres and the Giants, what they got going on. If the Braves are able to keep things going like they're rolling right now, that wild card race is going to be between the Padres, Giants, and the Braves, as opposed to the Cardinals and the Brewers trying to throw their hat as a backup in. So you need to win this division if you're looking at the NL Central. There's no way they're going to have a second playoff team out of this division.
Well, and I'm going to get to that in our next segment, but I do want to say that, winning that division punches you that card to have those memorable moments in October, and maybe, just maybe, you get yourself a ring. And if you want to have a ring for that special moment, may I recommend BlueNile.com. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as the one you love with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft the perfect engagement ring for the one that you love. Each ring is one of a kind. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On MLB listeners get $50 off of purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. So use code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships for free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free. If you can shop stress-free for an engagement ring, you can do it through BlueNile.com and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. And hey, listeners of Locked On Sports, the ultimate NBA mock draft starts on the 16th day of June with over 50 insiders. Nothing equals the ultimate NBA mock draft. The Locked On NBA Big Board Draft experts plus Odyssey listeners. The first pick is June 16th. Search Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and follow now so you don't miss a pick. All right, we are doing a crossover. I am your pal Sully of Locked On MLB. That's our new pal, Dominic Cotroneo from Locked On Brewers. You were mentioning at the end of the previous segment the fact that we're probably going to have a logjam between New York, the Mets, the Braves, the Phillies. They're trying to punch their card. San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. Right there, that's 6 teams that are legitimate pennant contenders. And because of the way the rules are written, one team has to come from the Central. So you got 3 division winners, including the Centrals, and 3 other wild card teams, which means the West and the East are going to have absolute scrums where a high-quality team is going to be playing golf when the playoffs start, even with the expansion of the wild card. But that also means that for the Brewers and for the Cardinals, they're the only teams trying this year. And the point, I believe you said, who was it that made the point? Was it Willie Williams was talking about how this is the right time to have an 8-game losing streak?
Exactly.
I'll tell you another way that's the right time to have it, when every other team in the division is scrambling. Yeah, the Cardinals leapfrogged them at one point, but the Cardinals haven't been playing well. The Pirates are disastrous. The Reds are not a major league team, and the manager of the Cubs is crying because the other team keeps scoring runs off us. That's not fair.
Exactly. Don't get me started on all that stuff with Rossi. I love Rossi, but that was way too much by him.
You put in a position player, you're waving the white flag.
Exactly.
And as I said on the Monday shows, as Miller Thomas and I said, there should be a rule that says, hey, we're done. We're done. We're going to wave the white flag. Because if you're bringing in a position player, you're not supposed to swing at that pitch?
Exactly. If you're bringing in a position player when you're allowed to have more than 13 pitchers on your roster, that's on you. You have the consequences, but that's not the point of this episode. Yeah. I'm all for swing for the fences, hit it a million miles. They're giving up, so go get your hits. This could help in arbitration. Go get your hits.
Hey, Gasioke got the home run. He was batting 160. Yeah, I think he wants to raise his OPS a little bit. Good for him.
Exactly.
I hope he swung from his heels 3-0.
Exactly.
Anyway, but back to the Brewers. I think the fact that the Brewers went on this horrific slump and they're still a half game out of first.
It's amazing because you can play as bad as you can, right? They had a 4-game lead ahead of this stretch. This is literally the worst the Brewers have looked in over a year. This is the worst the Brewers have looked since 2020. Okay.
This is the worst. This is the worst they've looked when they had like Jeff Cirillo and they had the MB.
Hey,
on their
those early
hats.
2000 days were really dark. We don't want to go there, okay? We don't want to bring up those bad memories of the early 2000s.
This is Pat Listach level, the Brewers ball I'm talking about here.
Late 90s. Oh man, those are some bad Brewer teams, and it's funny because Vinny Rottino, who I have on the show every now and then, talks about growing up with those teams, and that the loss of confusion of just like, we just saw the Bucks win a title for the first time in 50 years last summer, right?
Right.
And you see these great stories. Yeah, I've been a Buck fan since day one. There have been hard times, things like that. This Brewer team has made the playoffs 4 consecutive years. And I swear, some of our fans, not all of them, I love Brewer fans, but some of our fans act like we're supposed to win the World Series every year. This isn't easy. This is not easy. It's baseball. Just look in the Super Regionals this week. 59-17 Tennessee Volunteers losing 3 to the freaking Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Shout out to Craig Counsell and Pat Murphy. It's baseball. Bad teams beat good teams consistently. And to put a World Series expectation on the Brewers, the Yankees haven't even won a World Series since 2009.
They haven't been in one.
Exactly.
Haven't been in one.
It just doesn't happen like show up with your team, you're going to win the World Series. It just doesn't happen like that. So for the Brewers to play as bad as they have played, to be still within a game against the Cardinals, with still 11 more games head-to-head with St. Louis, there's no reason to even unlock the panic button yet. Yes, There have been poor performances from key guys. You mentioned Corbin Burnes already. Right. Obviously, the injuries too, but there is no reason to even unlock it until the second half.
By the way, few things get my ire more than hearing someone say something incorrect regarding baseball. I don't mind if they say something that's opinion. If they say, I'd rather have Mike Trout than Bryce Harper, I think that this pitcher, Max Scherzer's a better pitcher than Clayton Kershaw's career. If those are matters of opinion and you can state your case. When I heard someone say, every year it's the Yankees or the Dodgers winning the World Series, and I had to butt into that conversation, I said, in the last 20 years, the Yankees and Dodgers have combined for 1 World Series title each.
I'd call it 1.5.
All right, but you know what? But let's not even split hairs. Okay, they had those were the requirements.
Those were the rules.
The World Series. Yep. Yeah, so they wound up having to beat 4 quality teams along the way. So granted the Padres were in full body casts when they were playing them, but that's not the point. San Diego fans are quick to point that out.
Absolutely.
But no, it's not the same teams.
Right.
Every year. That's insane to think that.
The Brewers pushed the Dodgers to 7 games in the NLCS back in 2018 before they ultimately fell to the Red Sox that year. You telling me the Brewers with all of their it was the opposite. They were the Harvey Waldbangers type team there in 2018 with Ryan Braun, MVP Christian Yelich. You go up and down that lineup. There was some pop. Moustakas was on that team, but there was no pitching. Right now, it's the opposite. There's a ton of pitching that isn't quite performing up to their standard and not enough hitting to the naked eye. But I kind of want to calm the waters on that. I talked about this in yesterday's episode that when this team's healthy, when you have the right contributors, Willie Adames goes yard on Sunday, Hunter Renfroe is going to get going, Rowdy Tellez is going to get going. All 3 of those guys have double-digit homers right now for the Brewers. They are second in the National League in home runs as a team. They have enough offense when they're all in there as they're supposed to function. Even Kutch has 4 home runs this season, and everyone thought he was old man Kutch when he was signed. There is enough to get it done when your pitching performs. So the pitching is not performing right now for Milwaukee.
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing, especially with the injury to him and how that affected their streak, is you're seeing that one of the best trades that the Brewers have made in the last bunch of years has been for Adames. And Adames, what he has meant to this team, I think in so many ways goes beyond the stats line. You saw the nanosecond he arrived last year in the deal with Tampa. And it was one of those there's always who won the trade. Well, actually, both sides won that trade.
Absolutely.
The Rays need to make room for Wander Franco. They got bullpen help, and the Brewers needed to anchor shortstop last year. Shortstop was a disaster until Adames arrived, and then you put in that keystone of him. And it suddenly made the defense better. It made some of the bats kind of relax, that they didn't have to score extra runs because the defense was letting up runs. It gave the pitchers more confidence. You saw Burns win the freaking Cy Young Award. Probably, I don't have the stats in front of me. Maybe the numbers don't back up what I'm saying, but I'd be interested to see what Burns' stats were before the arrival of Adames and afterwards. I know he had a great second half last year, Corbin Burns, obviously in the great season he had.
But just look at the Brewers overall. There were 30 games over 500 when Adames arrived, and there were 2 games under when he showed up. So, I mean, it's just like that dude brought all of the energy the Brewers needed. And just quickly on that Rays trade where both teams win. So, JP Feyereisen, nasty right now with the Rays. If he's not good enough at the start of the year, you don't know if that trade's going to happen. Furthermore, they sent Drew Rasmussen, a former first-round pick at the Brewers. Great pitcher. Brewers had depth at the starting rotation. Now they got Aaron Ashby in the wings. Now they got Ethan Small in the wings. They knew they could expend somebody like that. And lastly, Trevor Richards also came from Tampa Bay to Milwaukee in that trade. That's the most.
I forgot that. I forgot that.
Trevor Richards was then flipped to Toronto for Rowdy Tellez in July. So that trade is going to go down as the most important trade in Brewers history if they can get one, at least make it to the World Series these next 3 years.
When we went into the playoffs last year, and I'm here in LA County. My father, may rest in peace, was a diehard Giants fan, and he died near the beginning of last year. And so I thought, oh my God, we're going to see the Dodgers and Giants clash. And we did in that great series. But I thought the Brewers were going to win the pennant because I thought the Dodgers and Giants were going to be bloodied and beaten up, and the Brewers pitching staff was going to take advantage of it. My thought process was actually right on. It's just the Braves wound up doing it instead of Milwaukee. And to that point, when you're talking about how unpredictable things can be, like last year you had a 107-win team and a 106-win team, and neither of them made it to the World Series out of the National League. The team that did get there was the 88-win team, which is a little bit misleading because they had a tremendous second half, but they were riding hot weeks from Rosario and Soler, but also the thing that none of us, I think we all underappreciated what Matzik, Jackson, and Will Smith did in the bullpen, that they just shut down everyone. It was similar to when the Royals won the World Series, that it was basically give us the lead by the 5th and the game's over.
Exactly.
And that's why the Brewers, who had superior starting pitching to Atlanta last year, and I would argue superior starting pitching to Los Angeles and San Francisco, if they had gotten past the Braves, they probably would have gone to the World Series, but they couldn't get past that bullpen. And then Freddie Freeman hits that home run, and then it's all over.
Yeah, 2 things happened with that series, too, last year, in that a big acquisition that a lot of people forgot about. Eduardo Escobar was acquired by the Brewers for the last 2 months of the season. He wasn't hitting for anything. In fact, he was benched in Game 4 for Luis Urias, who not only got things going with the bat, but also made some insane defensive plays at third base, which made the Brewers confident enough that, hey, Luis Urias can play third. He can be the guy at third with Willie Adames next season. And on top of that, too, don't forget, the Brewers didn't have Devin Williams because he made an immature, dumb mistake after the celebration of winning the Central. He punched a wall with his right hand, his throwing hand, broke his hand. He wouldn't have been available until the World Series. Remember, Josh Hader allows that home run to Freddie Freeman in the 8th inning, the inning that normally belongs to Devin Williams. And Josh Hader hasn't pitched multiple innings since the 2019 disaster that was the wild card game with Trent Grisham in right field. So to ask that maybe Hader was going to go multiple innings there in Game 4 to try to send the series back to Milwaukee, and then ultimately the only guy who's had multiple homers as a left-handed batter against Josh Hader tags him again, Freddie freaking Freeman. What a career for that guy. What a feather in the cap for him. What's going to go down is maybe one of the best closers of all time, and Josh Hader, definitely the best left-handed closer. He's getting there, in my opinion. So for Freddie to do that last season was absolutely epic storybook for him and to win a title, yada, yada. But don't forget, the Brewers also did not have their second best reliever in Devin Williams available.
Well, and it just goes like when you make some of these moves, like we're talking about the Adames trade and how, this player was flipped for Tellez and everything like that. Sometimes if you want to win, you got to sort of pop the hood and tinker with the engine. And you don't always know if the parts are going to fit. but you always know the parts are going to fit. If you go to Rock Auto, with the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions and wait for the person behind the counter to order the parts on the computer, and they're only going to choose the brands that their warehouse supplies? You don't need that. You've got computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Their prices are reliably low for every customer. It's a family business, Rock Auto, serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. 20 years ago, whenever I see something's 20 years ago, I assume they mean 1990. No, that was 2002. They have everything you can need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even a new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and try to find a solution for your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car are ever going to need are at rockauto.com. We are here with Dominic Cotroneo, from the host of Locked On Brewers. I am going to, you don't mind if I ask this, your dad is the voice of the A's.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he is.
And I have a huge soft spot in my heart for the A's, all my years in the Bay Area. I love going to A's games. I love A's fans because they're not there because it's fun to go to there, or they're not there because it's glamorous. They're there because they love their team. And God, obviously they have to build a new park, and everyone's talking Vegas. I think Vegas would be an absolute disaster to put a Major League Baseball team in Vegas. I would much rather see it either in Vancouver or in Portland, or Nashville or some other place. I think Vegas is Miami and Phoenix waiting to happen all over again. But
well, yeah,
that's
for Rob Manfred's perspective, is just that, look, he wants to expand, right? And until the A's stadium is figured out, he can't.
And Tampa.
Expand. And Tampa's not going anywhere. That lease is signed for another 9 years, whereas the A's are getting ready to move out of Oakland. Their lease is up at the end of next year. So there's a lot going on there of more urgency with Oakland. Tampa Bay, that lease is locked in. They ain't going anywhere. I think people need to adjust to that. Tampa Bay is not going anywhere for another 9 years. So That's all I would say. But yes, that's my dad. Love the green and gold. Grew up going to those games. Absolutely love my homies in the outfield with the drums and the flags.
Are they amazing?
When it pisses off opposing fans, it's my favorite thing, because that means we've already won the game. Yeah, I love everybody in Oakland.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. Your dad, he's a great announcer. I love listening to the games, and I still miss Ray Fossey, who is what a great voice, everything he was. Hell, I miss Bill King for that matter. But that's
Helmy Toledo. Amen to that.
That's not it. But we're not talking A's here. We're not talking that team that Raleigh Fingers played for. We're talking for the team that he actually won a Cy Young and MVP with, and that is the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm old enough to remember those teams. My family moved to Europe for a couple of years, and in between 80 and 82. And in the summer of 81, we came back to America for just to spend the summer vacation there. And I wanted to do two things, just two damn things, when we came back to America for the summer. I wanted to go see a baseball game, and I wanted to see Superman 2, because the Krypton criminals were broken loose and Superman had to take them on. Those are the only two things I wanted to do. And it was the summer of 81, the year of the strike. So I came back and there was a strike on. I said, are you effing kidding me? But fortunately, I didn't get to see a game at Fenway, but when we were visiting relatives in Connecticut, I got to see one game at Shea Stadium. The only time I ever saw Mike Schmidt and Pete Rose live was at a game there. But we moved to the Bay Area when I was in the late 80s, which was a really good time baseball-wise to move to the Bay Area, because the Giants were great and the A's were great. And I got to experience the joy of having an American League and a National League team and a minor league team in San Jose, where I got to see Ken Griffey Jr. play for the San Bernardino Spirit against San Jose. And I got to go see games at Stanford. I could see Jack McDowell and Mike Mussina. I got the future players in there. So, yeah, that was a great time. But I remember my best buddy when we lived in Europe was a Milwaukee Brewers fan. And so we came back to America in time for the 82 World Series, and we had a VCR. And I have no idea if I'm admitting a crime, because we were recording the events and descriptions without the express written consent of Major League Baseball back in 1982, we were videotaping the games on our VCRs and mailing them back to Geneva, Switzerland for my friend PJ to watch the Milwaukee Brewers win the pennant but come just short of the World Series. And you would have thought I grew up in Eau Claire or Oshkosh. I was rooting for the Brewers so hard in that series. But alas, injured Raleigh fingers basically cost the Brewers a championship in '82.
And Cy Young, Vukovic. Those are some pretty darn good teams in 81 and 82. In 82, obviously the team that still holds a lot of weight in this town. And it seems like a blink of an eye, and it's been 40 years, shockingly, for a lot of those guys. And I tell you what, though, those guys are about to show up here. We're having like a 40th anniversary, some sort happening in July. But there's one constant from all of it. Speaking of radio voices, the one, the only Bob Uecker. Still here, still kicking. He's great.
I want the Brewers to win the World Series, if for no other reason than to hear Bob Uecker call the last out of the World Series.
They've done it. That would be you.
It's so great. When you think about that 82, I'm going a little tangent here, but that 82 postseason, the Brewers had Hall of Fame. Now Ted Simmons is in the Hall of Fame. Robin Yount's in the Hall of Fame. Paul Molitor is in the Hall of Fame. Raleigh Fingers in the Hall of Fame. And Don Sutton was on that team, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Okay. The Cardinals had Ozzie Smith is in the Hall of Fame. And you had Whitey Herzog, the manager's in the Hall of Fame. Bruce Suter's in the Hall of Fame. And you also had Keith Hernandez is not in the Hall of Fame, but a lot of great players like Keith Hernandez, William McGee, friend of the podcast, Lonnie Smith, who was a guest on the show a few years ago. And the thing that blows my mind about that team, because back then the Brewers were an American League team, they beat the Angels. And the Angels had Doug DeCences and Bobby Grich, two unbelievably underrated players from that time. They also had the following former MVPs: Don Baylor, Fred Lynn, Rod Carew, Reggie Jackson. This was their lineup. And I watched the final game of that playoff series between the Angels and the Brewers. And I remember I was watching it, and by the fifth or sixth inning, I kind of sat back and I thought, like, wait a minute, the Brewers win this, right? I distinctly remember the Brewers going to the World Series in 1982. But how? How did they win it? And then I remembered those two words that make everyone happy on the opposing team: Gene Mauch. Gene Mauch, the manager. Look, I'm not going to disparage Gene Mauch. I'll just say that he could make any great team good. And that Angels team, which was as loaded a superstar team as I'd ever seen, came out a couple of pitching decisions short. And Cecil Cooper sort of waving down the clutch hit to left field, where they did not bring in the reliever to face him, and in come a couple of runs. Brewers wind up winning the game, and there you go.
Yeah, Andy Hassler came in a batter too late. That's right.
That's right. It was the late Andy Hassler. I was trying to remember who we did bring in. That's right.
Look, I'm deep in and out here because we're getting ready for the 40th celebration. But also remember that CS that time in '82, it was still like 5-game series then.
Yeah.
So the Brewers are actually down 2-0 in that series and came back to win the last 3. So to make it to the World Series, their first and only World Series appearance. They're trying to get back. They're aware of the monkey that's on their back right now. This team and last year's team are probably the best chances that they're going to have at it, and maybe next year too. But man, it's just another example with the playoffs expanding of how hard it is to get there. Back then, you just had to beat one team and then you were in. That's not the case anymore.
That was a hard team for them to beat, though. That Angels team. Right. Fred Lynn won the ALCS MVP on the losing team. That's how great his ALCS was. And as a native New Englander, seeing Freddie Lynn in an Angels uniform was never felt right to me. There's one other reason why, again, I can't claim that I'm a Milwaukee Brewers fan, but I do want to see the Brewers win the World Series if for no other reason than to make it easier to talk about how long Milwaukee fans have been waiting for a World Series title. When the Nationals won a couple of years ago, and I'm sorry to bring that up again, the Senators had won. The Nationals have not won the World Series, but Washington had a champion with the Senators in 1924. But it's a different franchise. The Nationals won in 2019. That was the last one. For Milwaukee fans, it's like, well, the Brewers haven't won, but the Braves won 57, right. And that. It's just you have to give a paragraph. You have to give a TED talk to explain how long Brewer fans have been waiting for a title. Boom, they won this year. It's easy. Stonk. Very easy to describe now. So, if for no other reason than to get the 1957 Braves off of everyone's lips, there you go.
And Hank Aaron and everything is very well represented here in Milwaukee. Because remember, of course, he started as a Milwaukee Brave, and the team moves to Atlanta, and he becomes, the greatest handed hitter ever to live, and then actually ended his career back here in Milwaukee. And
as a DH, yep.
As a DH, exactly. Coming back to the American League and everything like that. So for this town to try to get back to it, and for 40 years, I mean, it's been 40 years since their last appearance. And I just said earlier in the pod, like, hey, the Bucks waited 50 years. The Brewers don't want to wait that long, but maybe it's a little bit of fate. And I mean, shoot, it's a hard road ahead of them right now. I do think David Stearns is going to need to make a move or two to get this team a little more consistent offense. Maybe need some middle relief in there too. It won't be a move that blows anybody away per se, but I don't think Josh Hader's on the block. I don't think anything like that, but they do need to make some adjustments to get to the World Series.
And I'm not going into another Rock Auto read, but I am saying that when you talk about the blockbuster trades, Willie Adames wasn't a blockbuster trade. It's not always the blockbuster trade. Jorge Soler wasn't a blockbuster trade. Rosario wasn't a blockbuster trade for Atlanta last year. It's not always the blockbuster trades. Sometimes the blockbuster trades can be a bust. Joey Gallo was a bust for the Yankees last year, and that was the big trade that got everyone's attention. I remember a few years ago, it must have been 10 years ago now, San Francisco made a trade for Marco Scutaro. That was like, okay, yeah, he's a nice player. And he wound up having an unbelievable postseason and being the glue for that team, won the NLCS Most Valuable Player. It's not always the blockbuster trades. It's sometimes who's the best person that will fit into this. Again, if I had told you when that trade was made, hey, guess what? Willie Adames is going to be looked upon as one of the best trades the Brewers have made in the last bunch of years, you would have asked me what I was drinking.
And no kidding, because his stat line looked exactly like Orlando Arcia's at the time of the trade, hitting up 200, striking out a million times, a little bit of power, but nothing crazy. But look, Willie has fit in well. This city loves him. He loves this city. He's got a lot of friends already previously on this team, which made it such a seamless fit for him. I still think there's another little under the radar move somewhere from David Stearns, and he likes getting team control. He likes getting guys that he doesn't do rentals. He likes getting an extra year or two. And granted, the farm system isn't quite what it was now, like it was last year, even 2 years ago, to try to make these runs. But there's something coming from David Stearns, I feel like, in these. I mean, granted, we got till August 2nd to figure things out, right? Because of the lockout, moved it back a couple more days. So August 2nd, something could be coming here for the Brewers. I could see it happening for Milwaukee.
You got to think of the season as you have to break it into thirds. From the beginning of the year to roughly Memorial Day is really just we're getting started. We're figuring what we are. Right around Memorial Day, you have a third of the season has gone by. You have a general sense of what you are. And that period between Memorial Day and the trade deadline is really when the GM's on the clock. Say, what can we do in this third of the season, roughly up 2 months? What do we need to do? What do we have in the farm? Who's coming back from injury? And if we can't get it back from people going from injury or coming from the farm, then what deal do we have to make? Because then, the wall is coming down like that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so this is for the front office for the Brewers. Now's the time to find your next Willie Adames, to find their answer to Soler or Rosario, because that division is theirs. Because they went through this disastrous week. And after that, they're only a game behind a flawed Cardinals team that is having a hard time beating Cincinnati of all teams. So guess what? This could still very well be the Brewers' year. And it's not always the team you expect to win the title. The two worst Cardinal teams under La Russa that went to the playoffs were the teams that went on to win the World Series in St. Louis. It's not always the team that wins the 100 games The 95 Braves were by far from the best Atlanta team during that run, but they were the team that won it all. So sometimes, like last year's Atlanta team, there were better Braves teams than last year's Braves team, but they were the one that all came together. So find those pieces, not necessarily to go win 100 games, but to win 2 games in the wild card round, 3 games in the division series round, and 4 in the league championship series and World Series, and then finally get that parade.
Make teams to win series, not teams to 100+ games in the regular season. Because look, the all-time record for most wins in a season didn't even make it to the World Series, right? I mean,
didn't get to Game 6 of the ALCS.
Yeah, right, the Seattle Mariners. So I'm just like, who cares? Make sure you get in, and then make sure your team is built for series wins, which, quite frankly, the Brewers currently are, if they are healthy, with 3 legitimate aces between Woodruff, Peralta, and, of course, the reigning Cy Young Burns. You've got 3 legitimate arms at the back end of your bullpen, ex-All-Star closer in Brad Boxberger, Devin Williams, Rookie of the Year, Josh Hader, the best closer in baseball right now. All you got to do is score 4 runs with that pitching staff. That's all you need to do. And they are built to win series, not necessarily to win 100 games in a season. So there's a lot of time. 100 games to go starting tonight for the Brewers. So the countdown officially starts to get real once we get closer to the All-Star break. But this team's got a lot to figure out. I still believe that they should win. They are better on paper than the Cardinals, but this division is going to come down to the last week of the year. There's no question. This is going to be a tight, entertaining race down the finish.
Yeah, and by the way, you set me up perfectly for a Built Bar read and an Athletic Greens read, but we don't have those today. So we got to keep that in my back pocket. You just queued me up perfectly. But you know what? Instead, we queued us up perfectly for the end of the show. Hey, Dominic Cotroneo, I really appreciate I know you and I played a little bit of email tag trying to get this thing lined up, but I'm glad we figured it out. Tell people where they can listen to your show and where they can follow you on the social media.
Yeah, we're at Locked On Brewers. I'm Dom_Cotroneo. Good luck spelling that in the first try. Cotroneo. You can find all of our stuff there on Twitter. It's tough to catch me sometimes, Sully. I work 3 jobs between this. I'm a caddy at Erin Hills Golf Course here in Milwaukee. And also I'm the statistician for Bally Sports Wisconsin, working with Brian Anderson, working with Jeff Levering. And then also I do it for Turner Sports. So I actually, at the time of this release, I will be in New York City getting ready to work Rays and Yankees here tonight at Yankee Stadium. So I'm a little bit everywhere all at once, and I travel my microphone with me everywhere I go. So it's a hell of a life. I'm very blessed, very lucky, and let's see how far the Brewers can keep me busy.
You're like the vapor. You're everywhere. Well, I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And you can follow this show at Locked On MLB Pods on both Twitter and on Instagram. Talking about the Milwaukee Brewers and seeing them weather the storm and see if they can have smooth sailing. Who will remember an 8-game losing streak in June if you win a bunch of games in October? This has been the Locked On MLB, Locked On Brewers crossover for the 14th day of June, 2022. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.